Okay, I think we're live.
All right.
All right, so people say hi to us because I want to be sure that this is actually working. I've never used it on my computer before.
Never done.
Karen, Helen, okay, cool.
Facebook Live
See?
before. Look at that.
Okay, great. For some reason, I didn't know that you could do it on your computer, but now I know.
I know some of these people.
It's pretty cool, right?
It's very cool.
Yeah. So, okay, so first, this is David Joyce.
Hi.
Hi. So, have a seat, David Joyce.
All right.
And so, I want to have a conversation with David just about scatting. And you guys can write your questions, but probably while we're speaking, don't expect an answer because we're speaking.
Yeah, but we'll see if it shows up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of makes sense. Okay, so
We got to hear some scatting last night.
yeah,
Some really good scatting.
yeah. We went to see the Gold Company, which is one of the premier university jazz choirs in the country, would you say?
Yeah.
And it was actually not started, but for a long time run by Steve Zagree at U of Michigan, right? Is it U of Michigan?
No, it's Western Michigan.
Western Michigan. And so run by a friend of ours.
Greg Jaspers.
Yeah, who's a big educational person.
Lived in LA for a number of years.
And who was in the group who has moved to Michigan? John Prue.
Yo, the awesome piano player, writer, singer.
Yeah. So a lot of you LA people know John Prue especially. And so talk about scatting.
The guy that can just open his mouth and sound like Chet Baker. I mean, right there, that's
He's
pretty good.
a great scatter. He really is. He's always been a really great scatter.
And you know, it happens that he's a great piano player. And the other, one of the other really fine scatters last night was the piano player. His name, I've forgotten his name, but he just took second place in the country in the American Jazz Contest.
And in Florida, just this weekend. So it's really nice to be an instrumentalist in Scat, for sure. But for those of us who aren't really instrumentalists, and I mean, I do play a little piano and some flute, and I did go to college for music. But I know there's a lot of you out there who feel really intimidated about scatting because you don't read music, just for instance, right?
Yeah.
And so my purpose is to make it a little easier for you to understand and to know what to practice. And I invited Dave to talk about it and fool around with all of this as well, because he's really knowledgeable and fun. And he's also the head of the vocal department at LA College of Music in Pasadena.
I'm very happy to be supporting the teachers there and the students, and having Cathy back on faculty is great to have you.
Thank you.
There's a lot of wonderful singers there, a lot of wonderful jazz singers.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. 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 The singers are really good. They've been very impressive this semester. So, we were going to talk, we're going to talk about various things, but one thing I want to say is that you should consider, just going back to what I was talking about before, for those of you who are intimidated by not reading music, you don't have to be intimidated by that. You have to have focus and good ears, right? And I mean, we know some people who are not that great at reading music, like the most incredible Nancy King.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yep. And so,
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's really awesome. So you don't have to feel intimidated, but you do have to do some work. We're not going to say you don't have to do some work. That is not true.
I think that, one of the things that I think it's important to start, along the lines of what you're talking about, is this thing that Rhiannon, wonderful singer and educator and artist, talks about is beginning with self-forgiveness. It's like, because to get to play and to get to have fun and get to learn, I think a big part of it is forgiving ourselves. And Kenny Werner talks about another way, loving every note. We talked about that last night.
Yes.
How do you love every note if you don't know what the hell you're doing? And you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing wrong stuff. I'm singing wrong notes.
Yes.
But I think that all of that comes down to not necessarily everything is perfect, but that from that point of acceptance, it's like, well, that's all right. There was we're going to talk about tension.
Yes.
There was some tension there. There was some stuff that didn't sound right to me. How interesting is that? How cool is that? How many trees do we see that are totally funky and weird? And do we say, oh, that's an ugly tree, get rid of that? It's like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So to be able to have that attitude towards Thelonious Monk, actually Kenny Werner talks about, said, I think maybe Monk just liked what he did. People just thought it was out there, but said, that's what I meant to do. And everybody said, oh, wow, that must be cool. All right, well, then that's it.
Right.
So if we could have that kind of, hey, I don't know, let's just check it out. And with that, then we can practice, and then we can learn and develop skills. And
yeah, and actually going back to Kenny Werner, because some of you might not know, but Kenny Werner is a great piano player who wrote a wonderful book. What's that?
Effortless Mastery.
Effortless Mastery. I highly suggest it. Actually, I've had rock students who have gotten a lot out of it. Yeah, not just jazzers. Yeah. But the thing is, what he says is, he's talking to piano players, but talking to everybody really. So you play one note, and instead of, there's two ways to deal with it. It's like, ooh, that note was horrible, or, oh, what can I make with that? So we've seen a lot of singers wince at themselves when they come out with a note, and really it's a question of every note against a chord has a tension. Could be 100% tension, 80%, 50%, 20%, 0%. There's some kind of percentage of tension it has. It doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It just means that it has tension, like the ugly tree or the unusual tree. Yeah. And we've all heard stories about Miles Davis and his famous line, "There are no wrong notes." And if you think about why he said that because he took it, and his imagination was curious enough to say, oh, what can I do with that note? And there's some famous Herbie Hancock comments about Herbie playing something that he thought he was going to die of embarrassment about. And he looked up, and Miles took it and made it into something else. So
it's really cool.
Yeah. So okay. So enough about that.
Oh, just an example.
Yes.
We do just play a G major 7 chord. And what note? There's a note that does not. Maybe there's a note like an A flat that doesn't belong in that, right? Which is. But it does not belong. Maybe Herbie Hancock can make it sound totally hip and just stay there. But it's like that tension is, and it's totally cool.
It doesn't sound bad.
No.
When you're moving.
Yeah. So it's where it goes, and that everything is tension. It's totally boring to go. The safest notes, the most comfortable, no tension at all.
Yeah.
But so.
Okay, let's go on about tension.
All right,
then.
cool.
Okay, so here's a great exercise. You don't even have to be a piano player. You can just literally put your fingers on pretty much any group of notes. You could start with the white notes and add one black note. So I'm not even gonna think about that. I'm just gonna. Well, that's a little loud.
That's cool.
Let's be a little more simple. So how about 3 notes or 4 notes, and then add a black note. Okay, now I don't even know what chord this is. I just put my hands down, And what you want to do is you want to sing a chromatic scale over it. Chromatic scale is every single note. If you're looking at a piano, it's the white and the black notes, every note next to each other.
Oh,
so yeah, 12. So okay, so what you're going to do is you are going to practice a chromatic scale. Here's how I suggest to practice it. You play the note, bum, 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 and so on. And then when you get good at doing that and you feel comfortable, and by the way, up and down, right? And when you get good at that, then you can sing the note first. Bum, and play the note, and then bum, 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 and so on. We'll run you through that actually, just so you can practice it. But then you practice that by yourself too. When you get really good at a chromatic scale, guaranteed you're going to be singing differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer Barnes has a very difficult exercise like that. That's kind of the brown belt version of that, something like that. The mixed metaphors, but she does the chromatic scale, and then she does the whole tone scale right away. So it's ba ba da 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 ba ba da 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 da.
That's
then you do it in all ranges.
Yes.
For vocal groups, it's really cool because you're working on the mix register. You're moving on different things like that.
And you want to tell them what a whole note scale is?
So what this chromatic scale is, they're half steps, or also called minor seconds, but they're half steps. And so a normal, our diatonic scale is comprised of half steps and whole steps. Do.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go. Okay, I'm going to repeat.
Please.
In simpler language. Okay, so because I know there's people who are like lost about
what are you doing?
Diatonic means in the key, and so half steps are, let's say you're looking at a keyboard and there's a white note and a black note right next to it. That's a half step. And even if you're looking at the keyboard and there's two white notes next to each other, that is a half step. So as we know, two halves equal a whole. If you have a major scale, just like starting on C, which is all the white notes, there is a formula for a major scale. It's two whole steps, one half step, three whole steps, and another half step. You could start on any note. You could start on F sharp. As long as you do that combination, it sounds like a major scale. So what Dave was saying was a whole tone scale it's called a whole tone. Yeah. So that is all whole steps. So it's not that formula for a major scale. It's all whole steps. Yeah. And you could sing it and play it for them again. It sounds different.
It does. It starts out sounding, if you've ever heard of Lydian, it sounds like Lydian. Because we have that sharp, but ba, 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 ba. Then here's where it gets strange. This is where it's always more difficult for most people. Ba, da, 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 ba, 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 ba. And that's C, G, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, C. If you have a keyboard and know a little bit about that, you can try that and check it out. But learning to tune the half steps and then tune the whole steps really it's a challenge. It kind of pulls apart the chromatic scale and then the whole tone scale, and because those scales get used in other contexts when we're improvising. So.
Yeah, and we have found, for sure, I can include Dave in this, that hearing this stuff is one thing. Being able to actually use this instrument and sing it is another thing. So, you know, doesn't matter if you love to listen to Monk or John Coltrane or anything. If this doesn't do it, you know, you're not going to be using it.
Yeah.
So you got to practice. Those two scales are great to practice, and they will add so much to your normal singing, and also to your scale, your scatting.
You know, just add there too. It's in here, but to me, almost more where it is up here. Is the ability to hear it.
Yeah.
If I can hear it, then I can tell the difference if I'm not doing it right. I can tune it. If I can't hear it, and I can see this when I work with students, and they'll try to do the whole tone scale, ba ba da 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 da. They can't hear those whole tones.
Yeah.
So it's also not just getting the voice to be able to do it, but also being able to hear what is a whole tone. What does that sound like? Just a whole step or a major second sound like?
Yeah. And for those of you who aren't accustomed to training, you know, practicing or don't know what to practice, this is it. This is, I mean, we're not just throwing this out there. This actually is the meat and potatoes. So if you actually sit down and you go over it, and if it's difficult, if you reach a difficult moment, you just go over it again and again and again and again until it's no longer that difficult. That's what happens. Swear to God, that's all you have to do is you go over it again and again and again.
And, you know, just going back to something that we started with, which some people could right now possibly be saying, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
I don't know even what I still don't understand what I don't hear it, you know.
Right.
I can't do that yet. But going back to the self-forgiveness and the effortless mastery idea, it's like, take what you know. I don't think it's useful. This is not the whiplash school of you know,
school of whiplash.
Faster! Get them, that's not a whole tone scale. You think that's a whole tone scale? I'll show you. It's like, have fun with it. Laugh. You know, it's like we get to laugh at ourselves. It's like, oh well, I don't think that was because without that joy, to me, without that excitement, there's just no reason to practice. There's just no fun. Music is not about proving something to somebody else, but we were born with music in us, and to get to bring that out in a way that's joyful, that brings life to our world. You know, there's a bunch of skills that you can learn, but don't get lost thinking that the skills are the destination.
Right.
The skills are just a means of expanding and having more fun.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something I wanted to say about that, which was, hold on, let me think about that for a second. Which was, this is something else that I always tell students, and I see it a lot, is that it's basically repeating what he just said, but a little more in a box, which is you don't have to be better than you are. You just do what you do. And if you do it as well as you can do it, that's good enough, actually. You know, people always ask me, or, you know, they always say, well, the musicians hate when singers get up, and we've all heard many jokes about that. I have noticed over the years, you know, because I ran a jam session for like 15 years every Wednesday.
So many experiences, no doubt.
Yeah. And when the singer gets up and doesn't listen, that singer could be the best singer on the planet, and the musicians not only dislike it, but they also don't sound that great. A singer could get up who's the simplest singer in the world, singing whole notes only, but if they're listening to the band, all of a sudden, the listener hears and experiences this magic that happens.
Comes alive.
The band sounds better, and the band enjoys it. So don't try to be what you're not. I know that's a real lofty thing to say, but work on that. That's part of the training. Just like, as we were saying, what Kenny Werner said, you know, that note might just be perfect, just all by itself, you know. I like to give this example. I really need to play it for people, but John Scofield record.
Oh yeah.
John Scofield, one of my favorite jazz kind of fusion guitar players. And on this record, he takes this guitar player solo, lots of notes and pretty intense. And Charlie Hayden is the bass player, and his solo is right after. You know what Charlie Hayden does? Whole notes. Yeah. Whole notes. And it sounds perfect. Huh. So Charlie Hayden is a brilliant bass player, and he decided that that's what the music needed, because even when you're scatting, we are in conjunction, we are co-arranging with the musicians. Yeah. And so it's not all about us. It's about what is going to make the whole thing sound musical.
Wait, what did you say? It's not all about us. Somebody forgot to tell me that. No, I mean, actually, it's funny because what you just said does, I think that all these lessons, it's Tom Mason at USC, yeah. When I was there, talked about spiral education, there's a book now, Spiral Dynamics, that talks about a similar thing, but that we learn something here, and then we come back to it up here. Yeah. We come back to it up here. Mm. And so the self-acceptance thing, that's still there. It's just like, I get a voice in my head constantly. It's like, what are you doing talking about scatting? It's like I've been sitting here with you, and we heard all these wonderful singers last night. What do I know? And so it's like, we can only be where we're at. So that self-judgment stuff, sorry to say, it doesn't go away. At least it happened for me.
It gets a little less.
It does get less, and I think that there's even that of befriending that. It's like, instead of going, get out of there, yeah. It's still anything that we resist persists.
Yeah.
So the more that I fight that and hate that, it's just like, okay, well, that's that voice. That's right. That's there.
Yeah.
And again, then I just go back to the business of playing and having fun and learning. And that's a much better way for me.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, I mean, when those voices start happening, the best thing you can do is to focus on the musicians. Yeah. It's really good because it gets you out of your own head. It's like, oh, what are the musicians doing? All of a sudden, you're involved in the moment and what's happening. And if you have practiced, then the stuff just pours out of you, whatever it is, and the practice of actually playing together with the musicians is really a valuable practice. That in itself. Yes. Let's do the chromatic scale.
Okay.
So I want everybody to sing with us. Okay, you'll hear us playing, and I'll sing. Or
we'll be listening for you.
Yeah. Okay, so although I don't want to start as low as I started because that was pretty low. Let's start around an E,
you want to play with it too?
Yeah, do you want to, let's pick a chord, because we're going to, well, maybe we should do the scale first.
Okay.
And then we'll just go up an octave, come back down an octave, and then we'll play a chord, and we'll do the same notes. Now, don't just sing it. We're going to hold each note a little bit long just to feel how that feels in our instrument, because it does have a certain feeling, okay? Especially when the chords start, too. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're, yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you want to play or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay, so here we go, everybody. Ready? Can you all hear that? If you can't, let me know. also, I want to say that the ranges also feel different, right? We were just in a relatively low range for me.
Right. Some women find that low E's hard to hit.
Yeah. So let's put a chord with it.
Okay.
And again, it does not matter what chord it is. It could be an augmented chord, a minor chord, a major chord. It could be anything, but you'll hear. So every time we sing a note, hold it and feel how the tension is. Okay, it might be a lot of tension, might be very little tension. Whatever the tension is, actually appreciate it. Appreciate how that feels in your body and your ear and outside your body. Just appreciate that tension, like, oh, okay, right? Okay?
Yeah.
You play the chord.
Okay. So don't worry about it, okay?
Don't worry about it, whatever chord.
Right.
Just one
Cool.
chord. Nice.
Minor, major 7.
I'm going to turn that up a little.
We're
Okay.
gonna start there.
Yeah, actually, let's start a little higher. Let's start on a G or something. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move a little closer so you can hear the piano, and then I'm going to sing the scat.
Do you want me to play the scale underneath it?
I think just the chord. Yeah.
Got it. Sure.
But play that chord. That's fun with a lot of tension. Play that chord again.
The major against the minor.
I love that. Look at that. Now we'll move up. That's a cool one. That's right in the chord. That's good. Play that chord again. That hits a lot of tension.
Pretty nice.
Yeah. That has a lot of tension. In the chord. Steady.
Last one.
Let's go a little higher just for fun. We're coming down. Good. Okay, now we're gonna just play. Well, we could play those chords again without the notes and just have them fool around with it. I like doing that because a lot of people don't play piano. Okay, so we're going to be doing that, and we're not going to play the notes, but we will play the beginning note. Just in case some of you are really good at this already.
Don't play the note though. Okay. Woohoo!
We're still going up.
Octave there.
One more. Now we're going down. Okay. So
That's
hopefully
actually really good for the ears too. It's good to sing it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's also really an interesting thing to see if you can hear that, to train your ear. Can I hear that? Because I was trying to just hear it in my head.
Yeah, without singing it.
Without singing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's another game.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about that.
People, you know, you can be sitting there having a conversation with somebody and practicing a chromatic scale, and you're smiling, and they're wondering what you're smiling about. And you say, well, wouldn't you like to know? I'm practicing a chromatic scale
in my head. Okay, so talking about scales. So how does this apply to scouting over a song, right? There's different ways. There's so much to talk about, and we're not going to be doing this for too long. I mean, another hour, which is you'd think was a lot, but it's
like
not
a lot,
that much.
It's actually going pretty quick.
Yeah, it goes fast. So two things I like to talk about is regarding scales. First of all, coming from the chromatic scale, which David touched on before, there are going to be these tension notes, right? And what to do with those tension notes? Does one stop and freak out on the tension notes? Does one move off of them? So one way is, if you're well versed in this chromatic scale, you can just move to the next note and then the next note. And so could you play that chord? So there's a tension note in it. So yeah, if I hang on the it might get a little aggravating for a little while, but as soon as I move off of it, it sounds actually quite nice. And by the way, these tension notes are written in almost every song on the planet, regardless of the style, and if you start looking at the songs that you know, and you can play through slowly even of the chords and sing the melody, you're going to find a lot of tension notes, which just move into the regular melody. Also, I meant to do that. That's the famous line. Sure. I meant to do that. Yeah. So motifs are repeated ideas, smaller ideas. That's a motif, or that's a motif, or that's a motif too, yeah. And you hear motifs everywhere in songs. I mean, I feel like the Great American Songbook guys had a game. They were trying to use motifs in the cleverest of ways in writing their songs. And then they resolve and of course there's right. Classical is filled with motifs. So when you use
the Beatles use one that I really like is Yesterday. It's so,
yeah.
And then the bridge just takes the others. So there's two motifs really that the whole song is constructed from. And I guarantee you they weren't thinking that. That was just one of those things that came out. But
it's a nice study to study the melodies that you really like and see how they're flowing. Are they using motifs? What's the range of them? Are they going up kind of like a scale? is the melody, what is the melody doing? Are they doing intervals? Oh, bah, oh, bah, you know, what are they doing? And then try those out for yourself, right?
Yeah. There's a scat solo that I have the students at the school learning right now, which is "Do It the Hard Way" by Chet Baker.
Yeah.
Which is a great solo, and he starts out the solo, and it's so motivic. It's just wonderful. Which is "Do It the Hard Way." It's, you know, it's the opening thing, and then his solo goes ba ba da da ba ba da ba da da. He uses just these little motivic ideas, and then he does all this cool stuff in the middle, but it keeps coming back to these little motifs, and you just go, oh, that's so cool. And this was improvised. This, he didn't construct it, didn't create it. It was just that came out. So I think sometimes beginning scatters think I have to come up with all these ideas. Oh my gosh, I have to improvise the entire thing. And it's like, no, actually, really, a whole lot of it is just getting a couple of little ideas, repeating them, turning them upside down, taking them backwards. You can augment them and take them. So, take that one, or that's just taking that same thing and doubling it. So you can take one little idea and have a brilliant solo without working so hard and feeling like, how am I supposed to come up with all that stuff? Well, if you can play with Legos, you can do this. You know?
That's good. I like that. I'm going to say something about what Dave just said because of what I've seen over the years. So sometimes, like in my Scat classes, somebody will take a little idea and they'll repeat the exact same idea over and over and over and over again. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about taking an idea and developing it. Like actually, like what Dave said, taking a piece of Lego, and you wouldn't just put it next to each other. You'd have like one whole long line that was nothing. So you're changing it, but it's still shaped the same way. It's still the same length, but you're developing. So what Dave just did, that it's a little development, an idea that goes along with the chords, of course. That's the other thing that we're talking about is blending, painting some beautiful lines over the canvas of the chords, the song itself, right?
Can you say that again? I like that. Got a nice alliterative quality to it, too.
I don't know if I can say that again. But it's painting little lines over the canvas of the chords or the form of the song. So, thank you. I like to think of thinking horizontally too, instead of, chopping it up too much. Like, here's a great idea. Okay, now here's a different great idea. Okay, here's a different great idea. I like to think of it as a connecting, almost like you're riding on a river, right? Like you're riding the boat and the river's going along, right? You're always connected, even though the scenery is different at every moment. So one time I heard Keith Jarrett live, and I was very blown away at what I heard, actually. It's not like I hadn't heard. Not the moaning. No, I'm not a big fan of the moaning. But what he did, and he was so artistic at it, was he'd have a motif. Let's say the motif, a lot of times motifs repeat 3 times. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but many times 3 times. So he'd have a motif 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and then that 3rd time, he'd take part of that idea, and he'd start a different motif 3 times, and then he'd take part of that and 3 times, and for his whole solo. It was mind blowing because do you know how long you have to work at that to be great at that? Oh my God.
He is a composer too. So that's, so that's part of that brain power, to the ability to take to write it out and then see it. Because I think, you know, that again, going back to musical skills, there's some people, there's a whole nother tangent, I don't want to get lost too long, but some people think that if you study music, it's going to ruin you. You know, some people, it's like, oh no, what I do is so natural and spontaneous. And I think that a lot of times that just comes from having been hit hard with oppression around being a musician and being told you don't know what you're doing. So it's like, well, that feels so bad to be in learning musical skills. I don't even want to do that. I just want to feel natural. But I think that if we can get over that stuff and do whatever healing inner work we have to, then it's like saying, gosh, I don't want to learn how to write words, because that would mean that I'd be a terrible writer then.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to study new words. I don't want to learn manuscripts because that would ruin my writing. That's silly.
Yeah.
So learning musical skills just gives you more possibilities.
Right. Right.
And so learning how to see, the point of that was to see da-ba-do-dum, da-ba-do-dum, taking a sequence and seeing that, oh, that's the same pattern.
Yeah.
Up a step. Whoa, that's what that looks like. And to, you know, and to see da-ba-do-da, ba-da, ba-da, taking that idea and then ba-ba-dee-da-da-da. That's the new motif. And then you take that one, and when you write it out, sometimes that can make you a really better improviser too, is to take that side too, to play with it. Just whatever inspires you to have fun with it.
There's two more things I want to talk about before we get into actually hands-on singing and stuff. One is how I know some of you are asking, well, what do I scat? What do I say? I mean, okay, I get the idea of motifs or, you know, repetitive ideas, but what do I do? So what I really suggest starting off to do, and I've done this with actually pros and semi-pros who just need a little bit of brush up on scatting, is you play through the song and you do really simple scales. You don't have to know that it's a diminished scale with a flat five. You don't have to know any of that. It's what you hear and feel. So if you were literally just go up and down until you start feeling like, oh, I feel kind of connected to the chords in this song, and I can hear simple notes in them. You don't have to, again, whatever you're doing is good enough. You do not have to be somebody, you don't have to be Bobby McFerrin. You're not Bobby McFerrin. You're you.
Yeah.
So just fall in love with the notes that you're singing and the way that the notes are relating to the chord. Fall in love with that. You know, have fun. Then Dave was talking, earlier we were talking about what to talk about, and you were talking about phrasing and where to start the lines and stuff. I think that's really a cool thing to talk about.
Yeah, there's we were talking about notes and what are interesting notes. And the one in the five, if you're at it's just the one in the five are maybe the least interesting because they have the least tension.
Hold on one second. Okay, so just for those of you who don't quite get what the one and the five is and what he's talking about, let's say it's a chord, like what chord was that?
That was an A major 9.
Okay, A major 9. The one in the A major is A. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Any chord, the C sharp major 7 is the C sharp is the 1. Okay, and then again, you can really learn what the numbers are just by sitting down, and if you know where middle C is on the piano, they're all the white notes in the major scale. So C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, and so on. So he was talking about the 1, and that chord was an A major, and you were talking about the 5.
1 and the 5, so you count up A, B, C sharp, D, E. So those two notes hold the least tension. So a lot of people are drawn to them because they definitely work. They definitely work. But they're not the most interesting notes. So finding some of the interesting notes, the 2, the sharp 11, the 6, and all those, if you're curious, you can look them up. She can talk about them some other time. We won't get too much into the theory, but the 2 is clear. So that's a nice note. But if you stick on that, even that may get boring. So phrasing is about thinking about where you shape and where you start and end. How long those phrases are. When we're talking, it's very rare that we ever use the same amount of space between each idea. Because if we did, people would think we're very odd. So we talk until the idea is done. And so the same idea with the musical idea. I don't go. It's like,
no, you don't.
No, you take a breath every so often.
Yes, right.
So the phrasing is about how long those are, but also where you started. That not just always starting it on 1 or on the downbeat or ending it on 1, because again, like the 1 and the 5, harmonically, it sounds a little boring. So,
okay, hold on. I'm going to slow it down, that information. So when he was saying start on the 1, he meant the downbeat, which is bum da dee da do bum da. That's that downbeat is thought of as 1.
Beat 1.
Beat 1. So he was saying don't always start there. Don't always start on the play dee dee da do bum da. Okay.
It's because if we talk that way, it would be. We should try that. Just, you know.
Okay, Dave.
Okay, Cathy.
What are you doing tonight?
Well, I think that I will
go to
have some.
That's really difficult.
And it doesn't sound very interesting. But laughter is good. Laughter is good. So that's all good. But so the idea is to consider 1, 2, 3 for this beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Ba ba do da 3 ba ba da.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
So just
that's cool. That's a good example for people. Yeah. I interrupted you.
No, that's great. No, I was done. I think I needed to take a breath anyway. Which is, I know Steve Billman is a wonderful bass player at the school.
Yeah.
And a lot of the students have talked about how when they watch him solo, he's a wonderful soloist. And as he's soloing, he plays, and they watch him like going, he breathes to his whole solo. So when he gets to the end of his breath, he stops, he finishes his line, because when you're on keyboard or on an instrument that's not wind-driven, sometimes it's possible for guitar players or bass players to take solos that never stop.
Yeah.
And to have that, so he'll play, and he takes a breath, and then he starts his next phrase, and it's a real good indicator for those who are not singers. We have to, because we run out of air.
Right.
But
that's great.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
So instrumentalists have something to learn from us.
Oh my God. You can feel proud. Should we do a little scatting?
Sure.
And also now would be a good time for you guys to ask a few questions. We'll do a little scatting. I'll come over and look at the screen and see if there are any questions happening. And we'll do our best to talk about that. Cool. Yeah. So we're going to pick, I think Autumn Leaves, unless you have another one that you like, because Dave is a great keyboardist as well. So Autumn Leaves is probably one of the first songs that all instrumentalists learn as well. And because it's basically, without substitution chords, the real basic information, is about 8 chords in the whole song with different movements of 4-bar phrases as far as the chords go. So it's kind of easy to relate to. And it's also a good song for you guys to practice, because if you go to a jam session, Autumn Leaves is a really easy and familiar song that a lot of players will know. So let's, yeah.
You want to play? Or
you can play because you're a much better player than I am. Now, something that I've done over the years is with Michelle Weir. We've gotten together over the years and put on the Jamie Abersol recordings, which is Music -1 for those of you who don't know.
Scat nerds.
Yeah, and we've had guest artists. Have we had you?
Yeah, we came about 4 times.
Okay, and then we had John Prue. That was really fun. We've had Calabria Foti and Cheryl Barnes and lots of. We've done a lot of. It's really been fun. Anyway, so we throw it on, and then normally we sing the melody one time through, just to get the melody real solid in us, so that the tonal center of the whole song is something that is inside of us, and then we start scatting. So let's do that.
Okay.
So we're doing it in the key of something A minor, you said? Is that right? Let's do it by slow swing. Let's go.
So there you go.
Okay, so we were clowning around there. Yeah, we were kind of in and out of the bridge.
Yes.
At the wrong spots, but anyway, we were
started
still
asking me to scat, and I'm like, what are these changes again? I have to do two things at once here. I can barely chew gum.
So, but what I really noticed about your scatting, by the way, this is really great to do it with a few people, because you get out of your comfort zone, you're inspired by the other person, and you hear yourself doing the same thing over and over again. So it's really quite an educational tool. But what I heard that you were doing that I really liked was you were starting not on the tonic. You were starting on those unusual notes that people just don't normally gravitate towards. And that sounded really good. Yeah. And you used the chromatic scale.
I don't know what I did.
I'm just making note of it.
I'll have to go back and listen to it and go, oh, why did I do that?
He started on beats that were not on the downbeat. He had different note, what's the word? Sorry, my brain. No, the timing of the notes, like eighth notes, 16th notes. Yeah. There were syncopations, right? That were like da 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 da, and he was actually matching it as a pianist too. And
which I think what threw me off.
Yeah, doing that. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, it's all in fun anyway. So anybody out there have any questions? I don't see any questions popping up, so feel free to question us. We have about half hour more. Now it's getting long, right?
The one of the things that we had thought about talking about was John Prue did a tune last night.
Yeah.
That Scatsville.
Yeah.
And in that tune, which is a really cool tune.
Yeah.
But the Gold Company did a cool. He'd done a cool arrangement for that. But he had that one line, "What thou shalt not scat."
Right. I think, as far as I can tell, the song is about like somebody ending up in Scatsville in the town, not really the town, but ending up like, it's my turn to scat, and it's like, I don't want to scat a lot, or I shouldn't scat a lot, or how many times have people said, don't scat, and I hate when people scat all the time. That's a whole other issue, right? That's kind of a taste issue, and a little scat is good. Never really killed anybody.
Just be aware that there are people who just hate scatting, and I think part of that comes from, sad to say, as much as fun as it can be, people who have never really worked at scatting, and instrumentalists, I will say, spend hours and hours, years working on improvisation. And oftentimes singers, there's just like, well, I just want to use my voice, so I'll just scat and I'll just do something. And they don't really play around with this all the stuff that we've talked about, these tools, including using syllables that I heard somebody at, I didn't go to Jen, but I saw one of the videos of this guy that talked about a list of words that thou shalt not never say, and he had the whole room vow to never use some of these syllables. And it's good to practice using lots of different syllables and from different languages, but try never if you can, and we could all take a vow. I think we could do that. Actually, I promise.
I promise.
Never to use the word dwee when I'm scatting.
Dwee. Yeah,
or
dwee.
squee.
I don't think I've ever used that. Dwee, squee.
Or squo.
Squo.
Randy Crenshaw talks about somebody used the word squo and it didn't sound good in his song. It's very alarming to a lot of people. So
yeah, so that's actually in the older days, in the Ella days, they were mimicking horns. Right? Yeah. So we they were really quite active with their consonants. And as the years have gone on, people of our age and younger have been softening that up. And so you want to you can practice the ugliest words ever and loosen up your lips, right?
Yeah.
And just go to the extent that you can go so that you can then come back to a scat song and just feel more comfortable using whatever comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. It's fun to actually, Rhiannon has a thing too that I've used with my students too, and it's fun to just play around with, take an unusual syllable and just use that. F.
Yeah.
Or K. It's kind of fun. You really explore them, and eventually, like, you put them in your tool belt, and then it comes up at the appropriate time. If you don't practice it that way, what we're going to end up doing is ba 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 da 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 da.
Yeah, and you notice, I don't know if you noticed, it was kind of a little subtle, but when he was using those, he was changing the vowels a little subtly. So he wasn't just going K K K K K K K K K K K K, right? He wasn't doing that. He's K K K K K K K K.
And trying different, yeah. Ki ko ku 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 ki 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 ki. So you know it's and okay. Can I say one other thing about?
Yes.
Oftentimes it's an emotion that we're expressing. All too often, I think jazz can be a real heady thing to do. That musicians go, "Oh, listen to these lines that I've got in this harmony. It's amazing." But really, I think what people oftentimes really want to hear most is an emotional expression through a song, and even your scat solo. So rather than getting caught up in just the line, sometimes people can find a cool note just.
And emotion.
And it's like, yes.
And a communication too.
Yeah. And it can really, the audience gets that.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to do a lot.
Right.
You don't have to know all these stuff. It's cool if you do, but whatever it is, wherever you're at, if you stay true to that and just allow that to be come out with the emotion that it will really reach the audience, and it's more fun too.
It's really fun. And I remember one student of mine who I said, it's like a communication. It's like communicate something, an idea. That changed her whole life of scatting. I'm going to mention a few things. I'm reading your comments. One, let's see. Do you ever get used to the sound? The dissonance sounds great when you do it, but a bit horrifying when it comes out of my mouth. Would you like to answer that?
I think that, like anything, it's practice. And it's not just hammering away at it, but it's a lot. But playing with it, it's like if that note for some people is dissonant, the 9. But remember that's 1, 2, right? So or the sharp, the major 7. But people go, that's not part of the chord. So you have to kind of acclimate to that and then see where that wants to go, where that tension. I think that it's getting used to the sound of our voice. I often don't like to hear my voice. I hear it back and it's like, ooh, that's, because it's not what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Because of this. So the same thing with the tones, rhythms, it's playing with it enough until we break through our own judgments and stuff.
Yeah. And also, Carl Schroeder used to say this. You know, he was teaching me, Carl Schroeder, a great piano player, played with Sarah Vaughan for 9 years. And he told me, he's describing, it might have been the Lydian scale, which is a major scale with the 4th degree sharped. Can you play that? That's the major scale. It might have been that scale. And he said, it sounds like Greek boys dancing. He was just creating like an image. And he said, wow. You know, and there was this emotion attached to that. Like play a chord and we can sing that Lydian scale. Can you play that? See, it's beautiful. It sounds, it's sensuous, right? It has this particular feel and beauty. Yeah. So I like that.
Yeah.
Somebody asked if we were doing this every week. We're not doing this every week. The next one, I can't remember. I have it on listed, I believe, on the Facebook site a little lower down on workshops. And there will be another one coming up in a few weeks that Mon David will be joining me on, who's a wonderful singer.
Don't miss it.
Yeah. And then for those of you who are in LA, I have live Scat classes 2 days in a row, a Saturday and a Sunday, April 7th and 8th. I just did it because a lot of people can't do either one of the days. And now Vivian, hi Vivian, what did you say? You said, you both are so in tune and answered my question before you even read it. Yeah. That's because we've been there a million times ourselves and with students too. Let's see. What else?
Oh, I was just going to say that there's some really wonderful free tools in the Abersold. He's got this little booklet that he gives out with every purchase that if you ever buy anything from him, his play along stuff. He's got this little booklet that's just got some great tools about the scales and arpeggios and how to get yourself comfortable singing the roots of, just the blues. Boom, 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 down, boom, 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 to get yourself to hear those things, different stuff. But one of the things that he has also a list in there, and I've compiled my own list for the students, but of some of the things to play around with, dynamics, phrasing we talked about, hot notes, scales, maybe a particular mode that you want to learn to play with, syllables.
Yeah.
Try, all those different things.
Yeah.
But not to get too caught up in trying to do them all at once. So I kind of brought in another wonderful guy, Stephen Nachmanovich, who wrote the incredible book on improvisation too. But what he's got in there, just a couple games that he talks about. One is that's roughly, I've kind of modified it and called it 2 at a time, where you just take 2 off that list and play with only 2 at a time because you can't do everything. But it's like to take phrasing and the Lydian scale. I want to try those 2 things, or I want to try dynamics and just play with dynamics and a different syllable than I'm used to using. So, and then you just do those things and just play with that, and then play with a couple other ones. And it's a nice way to start familiarizing yourself with this tool belt of all these different possibilities.
Also, what is the definition of mode?
The mode, they come from the Greek modes. And the Greek modes, you may have heard of them. Ionian is the major.
Well, what is the definition of mode? It's a particular scale sound there are different modes, and there's a particular sound that happens over a chord. Would you say that?
Yeah.
They start on different degrees of the scale.
Right.
But the reason why I'm bringing that up too is because Judy Niemek has, I think, one of the best books I've ever seen on modes with a CD that actually is so incredibly helpful to just pop in and sing it over and over again with her doing it, and then you do it. It's called Hear It and Sing It, right?
Yeah,
Sing it and hear it and sing it. Seriously, one of the best tools you could ever have. It's so user-friendly and gets you really. She
goes through, just what Cathy was talking about, but in other patterns too. It's the Phrygian mode, starting in the 3rd degree. So, which is a really
over the chord, right?
Over the chord. So, and then you practice singing that mode, and then you also practice ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da. So you
lots of different ways to sing the scale. Can you play a chord and we can sing that Phrygian over it? Oh,
which one?
Just a regular scale, just so they can hear it.
Ba 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 ba. It's that flat 2 that's the most.
Right. So they're known as modes, and they're extremely helpful.
Yeah. The Dorian mode, the most common, Phrygian is moderately used. The Dorian mode is used all the time. Mixolydian mode is used all the time in blues because it's just a flat 7. So every time you hear a blues, you're singing the. If you're not doing if you're not singing the blues scale.
Oh yeah.
Which is. It's another great.
Aviva wants to know what the hot notes means.
Good. Good. Hot notes are those that have the most tension, more tension. So the hottest notes are out of the scale entirely, or out of the mode entirely, and those are the notes we were talking about, like any of those notes are. They're all fairly constant, but the 2 and the 6 and the sharp 11 are going to be hotter than the other ones. But then you've got notes that are really hot, and those we started the conversation an hour and a half ago with.
So more tension.
More tension.
Also, of course, we can't get away with Scat class without mentioning Scatability.
Oh yes.
Michelle Weir,
she's got an awesome.
Genius girl on the planet. She has a great app. It's called Scatability. It's pretty cheap to get. I think free, and then you
for the basic, and then you can buy plugins based on what you want. She's got some great singers that you scat along with them, and then you do your own thing.
Yeah.
It's a great tool.
Yeah, really great tool. So if we were going to go through a song really slow, it could be Autumn or it could be something else. Like Our Love Is Here to Stay, or I don't know. Any
Blue Boss or something?
Blue Boss.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah. So
I see some hearts on there.
I know.
People love you.
And you.
Ah.
So if we're just going to go through this slowly, and I'm going to try and utilize some of what we were just talking about. I'm not going to sing a lot of notes all the time. I'm going to sing some whole notes and leave some space. Space is not nothing. Space is just like a note choice. It's a choice, and it creates. It can create tension, and it also can create dynamics, and it can create emotions if it's left, if it's put into the right place, right?
It's also the context in which all the notes that we want to sing are placed. And so it's very powerful. There's a really cool chapter in Victor Wooten's book.
I love that book.
The Way of the Musician, or The Musician's Way, or something like that. Wonderful, metaphorical story. But
great book.
He's got a chapter on space, and he's taught space, I think, by this Russian palm reader or something, like some crazy story. But it's a fun book.
It's a great book. Yeah,
space
So, actually, let's do "Our Love Is Here to Stay," or something a little more familiar with singers.
Okay.
Because Blue Bossa is not the song that they would pick, or some might not know.
Okay. Do you have
There Will Never Be Another You, or we can do this.
Yeah.
What are
we doing? We got 15 minutes.
Yeah. So
we can cram some more stuff in here.
let's pick There Will Never Be Another You.
Okay.
Okay. 1, 2.
It's oftentimes not really up tempo.
Okay, we're gonna just kind of go a little bit slow so that we can actually even slower. Let's see. So something, and by the way, if you don't have the iReal Pro app, you should get that, because you can pick your key, you can pick the song, and you can pick the tempo, the style, you can pick it Latin, swing, whatever you want. So we know this song, but Wow, nice solo, right? That was nice.
Thank you. Yours too.
You played and sang in that one. I'm just checking to see any questions here. Okay. All right. Well, there's not a lot of questions. We're just going to.
I want to hear them sing.
Yeah, we want to hear you sing. Come on. I can't hear anybody.
Nanu, nanu.
So just to reiterate some ideas. So I mean, emotion and emotion always leads. I mean, even when you're singing, when you're not scatting, when you're actually singing the song itself, right? Emotion should always lead, and all of the taste and the choice comes behind it. It's the work that you've put into it, listening and practicing some of these things that we're talking about, and of course more. Are you good at emotion? You probably are, right? Maybe you haven't practiced your emotion in scatting, but you're good at emotion, right? Everybody's good at emotion. So
sometimes we hide it. We don't allow space for it, and music is a wonderful tool. We all know for allowing that to come through us.
Yeah.
And scatting can be a great thing because you don't have to worry about words, what you're saying. Nobody knows what you're saying, but they can feel what you're feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, there's colors and stuff. So you might feel sassy in one moment, or you might feel kind of haunting in another moment. And of course, this also depends on the players, right? Whether it's Jamie Aebersold or a live player. What are they playing? Like, let's just ask Dave as a player to play that last song with some substitution chords and maybe a different feel, like a bossa nova or something like that, and see what is he going to come up with, and what am I going to come up with singing that, or he comes up with singing. Just try that out, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you know, the other thing I wanted to mention too, this is very important. We're doing it naturally, but the other thing is to actually look ahead. Your focus is not it's not in the past moment, like what did I just do? It's in the moment and the future moment.
what's happening now and what's coming next. And it really makes a huge difference. And players will go, yeah, when they hear you looking ahead. You can't hide it when you're looking ahead. What's the next chord? What's the next chord? What's the next chord? Just thinking about the sound of what's coming next. That's really, we're doing it naturally because we're used to doing it, you know.
And you also, when you learn the songs, really take them in, like this song, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, but you play towards the bridge. You think towards, well, where do I want to, I know that the bridge is, it's lifting off somewhere, so you want to build towards that rather than stay away from that. Da 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 da. Wait for the bridge, and then okay, now I'll figure out what it is. But I hear the bridge, and I practice hearing those changes, even if it's slow.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's coming up. So what note do I want to arrive at there?
Yeah.
So it goes somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Too. When you find it.
So we're going to sign off now. I just want to reiterate that this is David Joyce. David Joyce, davidjoyce.com, right?
No.
davidjoycemusic.com?
David Joyce, yeah, whatever. It's it's being built.
Oh, my goodness. Well, maybe this will inspire him to build.
But you can look me up on Facebook under Rejoice Man.
Okay, and does that have your whole biography and stuff?
It has a bunch of stuff on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
David, he's played for famous people.
Natalie Cole, Burt Bacharach, toured with David Byrne from Talking Heads, and a bunch of different things.
Yeah. And so, and like I said as in the beginning, David is the head of the vocal department at LA College of Music, LACM, in Pasadena, which is a spin-off school from MI. But within its own right, it's a great school. It has a lot of international students and lots of great musicians, professional musicians who are the teachers. It's a really great program. I teach there a little bit as well. And
Ralph Humphrey is in charge of the drum program.
Yeah. Joey Heredia is there, the drummer.
Jerry Watts.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just had some amazing artists. Philip Ingram was just there the other day. James Ingram's brother, amazing singer. And
it's
Patty
a great place. You know what I like about it the most is that you really, as a student, you really have so many opportunities to get your shit together. To work on stuff, to work with other musicians, to work with professional musicians, as well as student musicians, to put together bands, to learn production. I mean, it's a really great school. Check it out. And then I wish I could remember the exact date of the next class, but please look down the page on this Facebook page, and you'll see it says workshops or Scat workshops, and you'll see the next Facebook Live. I think it's in maybe 2 weeks, like the 20-something.
Scouting workshops, that would be the one.
Yeah.
I just had it, but
it's a Wednesday night again, but it starts later. Tonight, actually, I wanted to start earlier, really, to tell you the truth, because I want to go see Orchestra Surreal, which is this arranger, Ross Wright, had created this orchestra about 25 years ago. And he has a persona that he calls himself Elvis Schonenberg. And it's a full orchestra that he writes for. Like, he writes arrangements for Jimi Hendrix music and that kind of stuff. He has 4 completely different singers, like classical and jazz and rock, and they have personas like Miss Thing. And and the orchestra, on top of that, the orchestra dresses up in really weird clothes, like, you know, whatever weird stuff they can find in their closet. So I love the orchestra, and I want to go see it tonight. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to make it earlier. But for some of you in different areas of the country or the world who are listening, you know, it's good for you too, not to have it always at the same time.
March 21st.
March 21st.
7:30 to 9.
7:30 to 9.
And it's another David. I think you're only booking. You know, there has to be a Mon David.
Yeah,
David Joyce.
that's so true. Yes. So the next time it'll be Mr. Mondavid, and he's a really wonderful, great jazz
Talk
singer.
about emotion. It's just
great instrument, and he's also an instrumentalist too. He was a drummer and a guitar player as well, and then April 7th and 8th, if you're in Los Angeles, you can come to a live Scat workshop. It's $25, and it's a 3-hour workshop. So you can just contact me. Yeah,
that's a steal.
It's a steal. And anyway, just email me, Cathy at CathySegal-Garcia.com. And it's been a real pleasure having you and having Dave here. Thanks, Dave, for coming. It was really fun, and I hope you got a lot of information out of it. Feel free to email either one of us. What's your email?
David Joyce 123 at iCloud.com.
David Joyce 123 at iCloud.com. Or me, Cathy at CathySegal-Garcia.com. Email us with questions or whatever you want. And see you again. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night. End broadcast.